Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Better Call Saul Season 6, Episode 8. It is called Point and Shoot. So full spoilers for the episode as always. We left the mid-season cliffhanger with poor Hamlin meeting his demise in front of Saul and Kim. And Lalo comes in. It's all very scary. And that's where we're going to pick things up. I mean, it's not the first thing you see in the episode. Obviously, we see a little tease of Hamlin's car and his shoes at the beach and whatever. But that's where we start off. Yeah, it's a very interesting episode. It's very interesting how much it actually wraps up when we've got 5 episodes left.
Yes, this moved quicker than I expected. That may be a good thing and may also be slightly a bad thing.
I think it's kind of exciting in that they've got now 5 episodes to basically do their ending arc, whatever they want that to be at this point. Right.
And that is exciting. But also, there's a little part of me that's like, we spent, the first half of the season setting all this stuff up. I'm like, okay, that's kind of ended now. And it kind of felt maybe a little bit abrupt for the amount of setup we had.
I don't think I feel abrupt because I think everything played out. Like I had no problems with how anything actually happens in the episode.
No, it doesn't in terms of what is in the episode. It's abrupt in the season-long narrative of it, I suppose. I think I felt it more coming off of a break of like, okay, we've stewed on this, for 6 weeks, and then okay, we're done. Now on to something new. I almost would have preferred to have had this before the break and then kind of have this last section, whatever it may be, coming up as its own bit after a break.
I can see that, but I don't think the ending of this would have hit as much as the ending of the previous episode, as for the cliffhanger, for the
in terms of just as a moment to leave on. I agree with that.
Yeah, because the Lalo stuff is pretty much dealt with. Obviously, I suspect that there may be some stuff with Gus smoothing things over with the cartel, maybe having to pretend he doesn't know what's going on or like what's happened to him and all that sort of stuff. But
everyone else thinks he's dead anyway, right?
Yeah, everyone else thinks he's dead. Yeah. So it's really
obviously Hector knows, but is it only Hector?
Yeah,
it's not like he can tell anyone, is it?
Yeah, it's just Hector. So unless someone really gets him to spell it out with that bell, yeah, and they'd have to know to ask. They'd have to have some sort of reason to get him going,
right? Which seems unlikely at this point, I would say.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in this episode. Obviously Saul and Kim are scared. They're whimpering, all the rest of it. Lalo explains that he's got a job for Jimmy to do, which is to drive, and he's like, I've got directions for you. Get off this highway, you go here. And then he starts describing the house, and you're like, All of a sudden, that big intro back in one of those early episodes this season where it really focused on what Gus's house looked like, it started paying off. Like, it was starting to pay out. Like, you've just won a bet, and the house is paying out now. Like, okay, all right, very good, writers. That's all what you did there.
That's very clever.
Because as soon as he said it, I was like, oh god, I know what house that is.
Yeah.
And of course, Saul doesn't. Like, he knows who Gus is to some extent, but he doesn't know what his house looks like. He's never been his house.
He has no reason to.
So they don't know who they're being asked to kill right here, right? This is the thing. And what's so good about this, right? There's layers to this. Is that, okay, this is really tense and exciting that they're going to make him go up to Gus's house. Obviously, Saul talks him out of it and says, no, Kim should go. Kim, for various reasons. One, she'll be more trustworthy. She's less suspicious. She'll look more helpless, I guess, when she goes to the front door and all the rest of it. He gives a lot of good reasons. But, part of you might think, if you've been a little cynical and you've been a bit jaded, you might go, but does Lalo really think it'd be that easy? You may think that to yourself. And the beautiful thing about this is that you can already think to yourself as well, like, well, maybe this is him testing. Like, he's not going to go up himself and see what the security's like. He'll send someone else and see what happens, and maybe that'll form his plan.
If it works, great. If not, okay.
but then of course you get the reveal a little bit later on. This is still him, scheming. This is still him. This is a diversion tactic, because this will pull men away from the laundrette so he can go in and lie in wait in there. Like, this is all part of his wacky plan, and I think it makes Hamlin's death even worse, that it's basically inconsequential, other than maybe like scaring Saul and Kim enough to like have to like do whatever he says. He just happened to be there.
Pretty much the only moments that Hamlin is even relevant in this episode is the ending, obviously, when it's the disposal of the body, and the only other moment I can really think of is when Jimmy kind of falls over on the chair and he's like lying next to Hamlin's body. That's the only other moment that it has any impact on him being there at all.
Yeah, there's a good moment actually when Lalo's like explaining his plan, and he sort of turns around and he sort of like kicks Hamlin's arm to the side a little bit, and it's like just a little subtle, like, because he's being all friendly and nice as he's saying his plan, which obviously he's just shot someone in front of them, so there's a natural intimidation anyway. But it's a nice little subtle, like, or just remember what I just did to your friend here. Look at that. But when you realize that this is him, and I think what makes this showdown with him and Gus so good, because for a second I was thinking, so Kim goes to the house, and I didn't remember this, but I did. Someone, one of the audience when I was streaming earlier, pointed out that this mirrored a similar scene in Breaking Bad with Walt going up to Gus's front door.
I've seen that posted. Again, it's one of those.
It's been a while.
Basically, this was the episode. For context here, this was the episode that Odenkirk had his heart attack while they were filming this one.
Oh, really? Interesting.
So because I clicked on an article about that to read the details, my phone then recommended me other articles about this episode of Better Call Saul. It was like, oh, you like that? Here's the algorithm. We'll just throw you 1,000 headlines. And one was including that, that little tidbit.
You know what's so funny about this is that this is probably the least physical he has to be all season, is this episode, because he's tied to a chair.
I think it was early on in the episode where he was tied to the chair, and so all that stuff with him and Lalo is shot like months apart, basically.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Yeah. So Kim goes up to the door. It's this is a wonderfully tense scene. Even the drive there is tense. She's like thinking, do I say something to these two cops that have just pulled up at the lights next to her?
And they look at her, and obviously Lalo had warned her, hey, don't speed, don't attract any attention, don't go to the cops, obviously.
Yeah. And this is the thing, she's going through with this plan. I think we should also make it clear that I think when Saul was convincing him to let Kim go, he was wanting Kim to just run and just,
yes,
go to the authorities, 100%. go whatever.
You could be really cynical and read it as just he doesn't want to have the blood on his hands that directly, but I don't at all think it is that. I'm saying you if you really wanted to be cynical, you could, but I don't think that is the intention. It is, to me, pretty clear. It's, he's basically sacrificing himself. But no, I'll take whatever repercussions happens here. Kim, just get out and get away.
Yeah, like this is even just the way they're saying it to each other, where she's crying, no, and he's like, no, you just go. You that it's very clear that like she understands what he's doing right now, but then she's going to try and go through with it because she's going to try and save him. It's kind of the bitter dance that their partnership is. Is that he more and more is actually trying to give her an out, and she keeps not taking it because she actually cares.
Which is
about
kind
that.
of the theme of the season, right?
Yeah. So the walk up to the door is great stuff, and the whole time I'm thinking like, but this has all been surveyed by Mike. Mike's here. Mike's going to recognize her and like intervene.
What the hell are you doing?
Yeah. And sure enough, he comes in and you don't quite see his face, but you're sure that's who it is, and he sits her down. It does that thing where you can't really hear, or sorry, she can't really hear anything because she's not focused, or she's too like high strung, and we get the same effect.
Just watching through the security camera is the view we have.
Yeah, there's a lot of that actually while she's there. There's a lot of like just watching her in this like fuzzy security camera tape.
Which Gus is actually watching.
Yeah. So you get this sort of like observer kind of feel to it that's really effective. Yeah. I love that she didn't know who she was here to kill, and I'm not even sure if this guy she points to in the room is an intentional like duplicate or like sort of red herring for people who are coming, or if he just happens to be a similar size and race and wears glasses to Gus.
I think that's because the description she's given by Lalo is pretty vague, right?
Oh yeah.
And she looks in the room and she's like, must be that guy.
So when Gus makes the choice to talk to her via the phone, and asks, for details, and she says, Saul talked him out of it. For obviously, it turns out what he was actually thinking is that, wait, that sounds like it might have been like Lalo can't get talked out of something, so that's what makes him think, oh, he's playing us, he's doing something, behind us. For a moment before I realized that, though, I was actually thinking, is this him being impressed that Saul talked Lalo Salamanca out of something, and that's why he's going to use him as a lawyer in the future?
I did the exact same, where it was like, huh, this guy must be, really charismatic, really impressive.
Yeah, that's how I read it for a second, and then the way he kind of goes into action, I went, oh, no, he's realizing that Lalo's up to something.
He's like, no, that's bullshit. You don't talk Lalo out of this.
Yeah, but sure enough, we see Lalo pop up at the laundrette when the guys get pulled away. Because that's the thing. They all hear that Lalo's at, Saul and Kim's place, so they all go there.
Yeah, and I'm assuming Lalo has obviously spent enough time around Gus. He's assuming, no, he's going to retreat to his own bolt hole. Not even just his house, he's going to go there, because that's what he's built. That's his own. Because I'm assuming he's bought his house for the most part. I'm sure he's built renovations, extensions, all the underground stuff. But the laundrette, that's like custom design. That's his thing. That's where he'll go.
Yeah, well, he doesn't even know that for sure, because later when Gus does show up, he has a line at one point where he kind of implies that he was expecting to wait until, things blew over and then Gus would eventually show up and he'd have his moment. It was actually just a surprise that he showed up this quickly, because he says, because he's recording him on the little camera. So I like the idea that this all builds up to them meeting there, because everything about what Lalo's done has been very smart. It's that Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad. Mike often gets these types of stories and scenes where he's doing something, he's got a plan, and you see it come together and you realize, and it clicks what it is. And so much of this season has been Lalo doing that, and this has felt like a really smart plan. In this episode, this entire thing with Saul and Kim is not because he actually expects them to get a shot off at Gus, but because it's all a diversion tactic to lure people, from here and there. But what I love about this is that Gus has also been always portrayed as this really smart guy who outthinks things, as does Mike. And what I love about it is that effectively this was kind of a clash of titans in a sense, because it was two people who were smart enough to try and outthink the other one. And Gus ultimately wins, but it never feels like Gus was definitely going to win. It kind of feels like this really could have went either way at the end, because both of them thought it through, had plans. Gus, we saw him with the power cable and hiding the gun earlier this season.
He was more prepared earlier on, but he also, just the fact that he went there at all, as relatively alone as he did go as well, he should have lost. He should have lost that battle.
He played a gamble, and I think he did it partly intentionally. He could have phoned Mike and said, I think this is going on. I think the reason why he went there on his own is partly because he was hoping he was right, and he was hoping that he could be the one to end it. I think even though he's very safe, and obviously we've seen him have not panic attacks, but he's been very cautious, and he's got the vest on and all that, and it's very stressful. I think there was a certain amount of ego, and this plays into the overall themes of both shows, because Walter's whole thing was about ego, and even Gus's entire thing's always been about dominating, building an empire, all the rest of it, as Lalo says in this episode. I think at some level he wanted to have this showdown, even though he could lose. I think in some level he wanted to actually do it to prove that he could win, and prove that he could outsmart him, because so much of it's personal. Once they're face to face in that laundrette, and Lalo's saying all this stuff, Gus starts to oh, I hate you, Salaman, because I hate Eladio. He's a sleazy pimp.
It's very personal for him.
Yeah. It all comes pouring out. And I love how it's shot when it happens, because it goes completely dark, and it's just the gunfire light pretty much.
Just the flashes as you see Gus running across, because Lalo's shooting at him as soon as the lights go out, and you see him running across just in the muzzle flashes, and then he grabs his gun and returns fire.
And we know he's wearing a vest. In fact, Lalo does, because he's already shot him in the vest to make a point before they go down.
Which kind of makes those vests useless after that. I'm pretty sure they're only really good for one shot. It's kind of how they work.
The second, when he did get shot at least once when he was running in the dark, so yeah, that stands to some reason. There's also an awkward spot in the side, though. I don't know if the armor would actually work.
Just as a rule, I'm pretty sure like the way those things are worked, like the fibers are like meshed really tightly, essentially, and then once they're shot, that impact breaks those, and it loses all the tension, and essentially the second shot, it'll help in the sense of it's a relatively thick piece of padding still, but it's not the same level of bulletproofness at all.
Yeah, but I mean, he doesn't come out unscathed, but he does get across and shoot him, and there's that moment of tension. Is like, did he get him? Is he down? Is this the end of Lalo? And part of, I think, as an audience, we're thinking, well, we still got 5 episodes left, so it might be a bit early for that.
And in the back of your head, you've got that moment from Breaking Bad, right? With Saul, like his first thing, like, oh, did Lalo send you?
Which it's very important that Mike, when he's talking to Saul, never says he's dead. He just says he won't be coming after him.
He does, although there's a very strong implication, which I think leads to my new interpretation kind of being a case of, one, this moment really just screws Jimmy over, like big time. This like anytime there's something traumatic, he flashes back to this moment, because it's that's what he's saying to Lalo, it wasn't me, right? It was Nacho, right? It had nothing to do with it.
But here's the beautiful thing about this, though. From Jimmy's perspective, even though you can logically, you can stop and think about it and like understand why it went down this way. From Jimmy's perspective, he came back from the dead once already.
There is that, yeah. And then also, I mean, I think the other way around it is simply just, even if Jimmy knows he's dead and has accepted that, more just this is something Lalo put into motion before he died.
Oh sure, yeah.
'Cause I'm not sure kind of what the time difference at this point is going to be between now and when we get to that point in Breaking Bad. I think it's maybe only a couple of years, maybe.
Yeah, I think the fact that he thought he was dead. Kim never told him he wasn't dead, right? So he's been blissfully unaware, and then he just walked in the door and killed someone in front of him. So he almost has this boogeyman kind of like vibe to him now. And I actually buy that he said that in Breaking Bad, especially since it's just like one small moment, and it's not like he's constantly saying, "Where's Lalo? Where's Lalo?" Where it's this repeated thing.
It was just that one moment of panic, like like I say, kind of flashback to this traumatic incident that kind of affects him for the rest of his life from here on out.
Yeah. So I think from a character perspective, Saul and Kim, like, despite the fact that they're in all these tense scenes early on, it's not really their episode in most ways. It's more about Lalo and Gus.
Yeah.
And once it shifts to them, I do love that it does feel like this big showdown. And it kind of feels like, oh, Gus just, in a weird way, earned the spot that we see him in Breaking Bad, because he just took out the baddest that there is, pretty much.
Yeah, we've spent, a season and a half with Lalo at this point, I think. Was it start of season 4?
It was
kind of got Lalo?
No, it was the ending of season 4. It was the season 4, like, last episode or 2.
Was it that late?
Yeah. And then we got them all season 5, and then...
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Because it was right at the end. It was when Werner was on the run. It was around that.
Yes, you're right.
Stuff at the end of season 4. Yeah.
It's still pretty good amount of time.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think it. Not that we need to have this like proof to us per se, but this idea that like if Gus's story in this show was about him earning like who Gus Fring is in Breaking Bad, like this is kind of the moment where he's earned the right to finish this lab in his mind. Like, this is my empire. In many ways, like. I mean, again, it's me also watch Breaking Bad, so I'd have to really go back and rewatch it and like think about comparisons and parallels.
I'm sure you will at some point soon now.
But that does feel like there's probably like a similar moment with Walter somewhere in the middle of Breaking Bad where you could go, oh, this is kind of the moment that Walter earned something here. I think there's probably parallels there. So that is interesting. You get Gus obviously phoning the assistant manager, whoever that dude is. The I don't remember his name, but I remember that
I want to say Lyle.
Oh, that sounds kind of right, actually. But he stayed back and kept cleaning over and over again.
That poor guy got shafted. When Gus is like, "Yeah, you're gonna have to do the open and the close." oh, my heart! Like,
he's gonna reimburse them. Gus, this is a family-owned business.
No. I know how much work opens and closes are in a fast food restaurant. No. They're the hardest parts of the day. That poor bastard.
He's going to do all this extra work for a week while Gus is recuperating, and then Gus is going to walk in and go, acceptable.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the guy.
Like every manager I've ever had.
That was the guy that was there late cleaning over and over again, and then eventually Gus just said acceptable. This is stayed in my memory because the screenshot of him saying acceptable when he's just looking down plainly at this silver tray, which is like the exact same.
You use that a lot, don't you? Let's be honest.
I've not used it a lot, but I've seen other people use it. It's kind of a joke way of saying they approve of something. But so
it's a good reaction moment for the language of online communication that we have established.
But yeah, so that's up that. I do, there's a lot of good little Mike moments in here as well. Obviously, Mike doing his cleaner thing, coming in to help. So, and it makes sense as well if you think about how Saul likes using Mike as his cleaner role, because like this is the man that cleaned up this most traumatic night of his life, because he came in and made it clear that hey, you can't talk about the fact that or you do have to talk about Hamlin being here because like people have seen his car here, so you have to keep that as part of your story. But today,
not until someone mentions it to you.
Yeah, but today, act normal. Nothing's happened. His car will be found here in a couple of weeks or whatever. Just do this. You're getting a new fridge. That gave me a chuckle, to be honest.
It's just because it starts with just them carrying the fridge out.
Yeah, but for a second I thought, why not just put them in the new fridge? Why do you have to like deal with their fridge? And then I thought, just in case anyone sees it, it's like, oh, that's the old fridge getting taken away. Nothing suspicious. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay. Fair enough. I do you know what? Major props to the henchman who started emptying the fridge, because I feel like whenever I watch a movie or a TV show and there's a character like this, or it'll be cops searching a place, they'll just start throwing things around and they have no respect for it. This guy was gently taking out the shelves, he was placing them down, he was taking the food out gently and placing it on a counter. This man showed respect to this couple's fridge.
He's well paid.
Yes, he's well paid, he does things properly, I respect that.
Yeah.
Unlike Lalo, that lazy piece of shit.
Oh, hello. Do you know what? The terrifying thing is he agreed to that open and close so fast that he is not lazy. That is horrifically committed.
That's because Gus is scary. That's not because
he's terrified of Gus. Yeah, he's absolutely terrified. But on Mike, I did like all this stuff, but my favorite moment from Mike, this is when he basically just calls Gus out after this. It's like, what the hell are you playing at?
Oh, yeah,
if you're going to do all this shit, you let me know. And again, we've just spoken about how Gus intentionally made that choice. It wasn't a moment of him not thinking, forgetting to inform him, just kind of being scared and running off. That I can't say for sure those weren't elements in his brain, but I don't think they weren't the driving factor.
It wasn't stupidity, although arguably it's still stupid, but it wasn't a choice made of stupidity. It was a choice made of ego.
Yeah. But Mike is like, no, I'm not having this. If you want me to be doing this, you want me on the payroll, you do things properly. And I do, again, like when Mike does call him on his shit and just stands up to him and doesn't take it, because it's refreshing, because not many characters do.
Yeah, and it's such a cold ending as well. Like, obviously they've got this great spot to bury them because it's underneath the laundrette, and eventually the lab's going to be built here and no one's ever going to see this. But there is this really coldness to a few things here. One, the idea that Hamlin will be missing forever and he's buried next to this awful person. And Hamlin doesn't, because Hamlin is this innocent guy. He doesn't deserve shit, like this. But what I love about this is there's a moment where, Mike's looking down and he's saying be respectful, don't be too harsh with his body, because he knows this is an innocent guy. This is not Lalo. This is someone who's just been caught in the crossfires.
Just chuck Lalo in, who cares? But this guy, let's at least do what we can.
Yeah, but he goes to take out like his wallet and his shoes, and for a second you're like going, oh, is he going to like make sure his wallet or something somehow gets back to his wife? Have it leave it so, and there's, oh no, he needs it in the car to like sort of prove, this was very tactical, so it felt really cold all of a sudden again.
Yeah, it was useful. The wallet, it probably could have done without, because the car is so recognizable anyway because of the license plate.
Yeah.
Obviously any license plate can just be searched anyway, but because it's such a specific, unique one, it stands out, right? And then the shoes was a smart touch.
Yeah,
I think. But the wallet is just like, let's just make sure.
Which actually brings me to something. Now we were speaking a lot in the first half of this season about how what Saul and Kim were doing to him might kind of like have a knock-on effect, maybe end his marriage for good, like ruin his life in ways they couldn't foresee. I love this twist on it, which is Mike sits them down and says, we're going to find the car, there's going to be cocaine, and that's the story you were selling, right? So just keep telling the lie you were telling, and everything will be fine. And all of a sudden, this man is going to be remembered as a cokehead who eventually committed suicide whilst hopped up on it. And just the guilt, the sheer guilt of them two sitting there, and just the misery they feel because he was in the apartment because he was mad at them. So that was already kind of like, in a way, their fault that he was there in the place to get killed.
Yeah.
But now it's like his memory is now screwed forever. They've ruined this man's legacy.
It's so because they always like, we don't want to ruin his life completely. We want to ruin his reputation just enough. We don't want to get him disbarred. We don't want to stop him practicing law. We don't want to destroy his career. But we want to do just enough that it'll ruin him for now. Whereas now, you'll always say, even if you decide it is entirely not their fault that he's dead, that they're completely blameless for that, which really they are. It's not their fault that he came over that night. But so even if you remove that entirely, the story that will be told about him now is their fault.
Yeah, like we don't want this to ruin him forever, but what it's turned out they've actually done is they've desecrated his grave. Like it's really good stuff.
That shallow, unmarked grave.
Yeah, I also even like, I agree it's just tangential that he was there. There was a knock-on effect of what they did.
I'm sure they're
going to feel guilty about it. They're going to feel like it was their fault. So they are just shell-shocked sitting in that bed being told all this. And obviously there's that great moment where Saul gets up just as Mike's walking out the room and they see his body getting shoved in the fridge. And it's just like it hits you that he feels the impact of that, we feel the impact of that. There was so much culmination this episode of everything the season's been building to so far. And obviously what's great about this is that, well, we're definitely moving on to something else because we've dealt with Lalo now, we've dealt with all the Hamlin plan because that all got done last episode, so it's left it fairly open. And all of this is a catalyst for whatever comes next. Whatever these characters are going to be doing now is going to be after the trauma of this. But we've been saying, are we going to get a full episode in the the future?
Yeah, I'm now wondering, is it more? Because this completely, like, we could have you could tell me now we have one more episode set in the quote unquote present day of the show as to where we are now, and like, okay, and then we could have 4 episodes of the, again, quote unquote future stuff, and I would it would make sense as to where we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting that, but yeah, it wouldn't shock me either.
Yeah, again, I'm definitely expecting 1 now, maybe 2, as opposed to just a few scenes here or there. But if you told me we were going to have 4 episodes of it right now, I would not be surprised anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not expecting that, but I like, it definitely feels like there's room for them to do whatever they need to now for the ending, because now it's like there's 5 episodes left. They have wrapped up. I mean, there's still some fallout, I'm sure, and some and I expect next week's episode will be a lot of fallout from the stuff they've all went through this episode.
But it has to be, yeah.
But after that, like they've got like 4 episodes to really just do whatever they're doing with, and alternatively, it may not be an episode in the future or multiple. It could be a thing where now there's just consistent chunks of each episode set in the future or something like that.
Could go back and forth, yeah.
And I get why narratively that may make more sense, because you can sort of thematically, put things together and have it play off each other.
It might not feel like such a jarring just jump to the future.
Yeah, I wonder, assuming Kim survives, do we see Kim in the future? That feels like a big thing to do at the end if she is alive still.
I'm more optimistic about her surviving now that Lalo's out of the picture.
For sure, yes.
You can't rule out accidents. You can't rule out.
He was definitely
her doing something, but he was the biggest threat, right?
He was the leading cause of Kim's death. Yes, until now, yes. In terms of odds, so yeah, there's so much for it to still do potentially to kind of wrap up this plot. I do, it's interesting though, they wrapped up Natural's plot in like episode 2 or 3 of the season. I was right back near the start after some focus. The Lalo stuff's wrapped up here. And I'm sure we'll still see a bit more Gus, but it does kind of feel like this was Gus's big, like, main thing before he were wrapped up. So, I'm curious to see what they've got in store for us here, and I'm actually kind of excited that I don't really know now because I can't predict it.
I think we need at least one more good Mike episode.
Sure,
because we tend to get especially in the middle of the show, like significant healthy plot lines devoted to Mike. And so far this season, he hasn't had much. He's been mostly relegated to dealing with Gus. He's had like 1 or 2 scenes dealing with his family.
I think it's because there was a lot of conflict of him going down this path, but now that he's settled into this path with Gus, he's not had as much solo stuff to do.
He's not. I agree. I do think we need one more episode of him cleaning up. Like, obviously, we got the literal cleanup this episode, but I think a bit more of him just doing his cleanup stuff and dealing with his family and kind of establishing that work family balance that we kind of saw in Breaking Bad, kind of getting towards that stage of him settling into that routine.
If Kim's going to get her happy ended, I can see Mike helping out with like helping her get away or something with that, or
could be, yeah.
And that's maybe how we get either good scenes with him and her, or good scenes with Mike and Saul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that could be interesting.
So
still, like I said, like 5 episodes to play with, and I think I was a little bit surprised this was on the shorter side of episodes that we've had recently.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there wasn't a lot of fluff. It was very direct and
and I'm not complaining about that because it was effective. It was well edited.
It was very focused. I mean, Gilligan directed this episode. There was a lot of moments with the body line on the floor that were really well shot. That thing where Gus walks in and he sort of looks up at the fan blade and it's kind of bent and it's like, oh, he's here. Those moments are great.
Absolutely. And it wasn't rushed. It was still the methodical pacing that I expect from this show. I think I was just surprised because I'm so used to these days when shows, especially like cable or streaming shows, get towards, the end of their run. The episodes, they start creeping up and like, they go, oh, we got a bit more to film. We got a bit more. And it's not just the last episode anymore. It's, that last handful can really start creeping up. So to see this being so tight as it was a surprise, but not an unpleasant one.
Yeah, and for on that point, I don't think, assuming you care about the show and you've stuck it through to the end, I don't think those run times creeping up a little bit in the last few episodes is ever going to feel bad, because you're always like, no, it's a few extra minutes because it's leaving us forever. So you're just like,
I wasn't saying it's inherently bad. I'm just surprised at the restraint. Because I think if they asked, if they went, hey, AMC, can we have an extra 15 minutes, an extra 20 minutes in your slot, they're not going to say no.
No. Right? I can see the finale being a bit meatier.
Yeah.
Like, it's definitely
I would expect that at that
point. Yeah. We got 5 more weeks left of Better Call Saul.
I am glad to have it back, even if it is only for 5 more weeks still. It was nice to sit down this week and go, yes, an episode of quality television. Sitting down knowing I'm about to watch something great.
I've had a good couple of months actually on that, to be honest. Between Stranger Things, The Boys, and
I also enjoyed The Boys a lot. I haven't started Stranger Things yet. I'm probably gonna watch Stranger Things this week because I struggled.
Very different thing, of course, but even Strange New Worlds, the new Trek show that just wrapped up its first season, like even that I was looking forward to every week after I got into it, and I was like, oh, I'm actually really liking this.
Yeah, I've heard decent things from a few people actually. I do plan on checking that out. Stranger Things, I was holding off just because those last episodes are so long that I was like, okay, I actually need to find the time. But now that I've got a week off, I was like, oh, okay, if I start watching them now, I can kind of fit them in this week off and it not feel like I'm trying to watch them late night after work, and I can actually enjoy them.
Yeah.
And also, that's a little bit different just because, while yes, they split their season very slightly, it was still kind of mostly all at the start. One big Netflix blow their load. Here's all your episodes. Whereas for Saul, it's like no. This is the night of the week that I get in.
Oh no,
and it's there.
Yeah, Wheelie's better, and this is one of the shows that makes use of that Wheelie format.
Absolutely.
So yeah, no complaints from me on that. Yeah, so yeah, point and shoot. I'm glad I don't know the titles for the upcoming ones because it would make me
maybe a little bit nervous.
Make me theorize because point and shoot is quite scary.
Kind of want to check.
They're not in IMDb because it just says.
Oh, they're not. Okay.
Nah. I don't think we're. I assume we'll know the next one before it airs, but like I don't think you get to see too far ahead.
Yeah, I don't have the next one listed yet. On the thing I usually check. Oh, it's probably a good thing because I'd see it and be like, uh-oh, what does this mean?
Yeah. So yeah, it feels bizarre, but yeah, it's kind of open for them to do whatever they do now for the ending because all the plot lines largely that we were working on have neatly wrapped up, and maybe that's good. So many shows when they get to the final episode, they wrap up their big finale, and then they'll have like 20 minutes of like epilogue effectively. And maybe it's actually smart to say no. The actual season story finishes, about 2/3 through the season.
We've got 4 to 5 hours of epilogue still, depending on how long these episodes are.
And when a show goes for 6 seasons, like that's a reasonable amount of epilogue time, to be honest. When you think about it, it's just
it's probably still like 5% of the whole show, if that.
Yeah, if that. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
By all means, go for it. But we will see what next week brings on Better Call Saul. Let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at @mail_first for channel updates. If you want to support the show, you can hit the super thanks button below the YouTube video, or you can go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us over there monthly. All help is appreciated, so thank you very much for any you do offer. But that is us, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?